We're going to open up the box to play Journey to Beulah. Quite excited about this, I am. So, I'm going to put the board game out. So as you can see, it's got really beautiful colours, and each of the colours represent a different city. So you've got Canaan here, Shiloh, Zion and Bethel. You've also got stones, and you've got different coloured stones. So the green stones are trial stones, the purple are PENIEL stones, the orange is quiz stone, and yeah, different trial stones are different colours depending on the city. You also have a pointer, which I'll explain more to you about later. And you've got cards. You've got 64 cards, 2 different types of cards, 32 in each. Just give me a moment to get these cards out. So you've got people cards, and you've got animals, artefacts and objects. Then you've got the dice, you've got pointers or tokens. Each of the colour corresponds to the city. So red for Bethel, green for Shiloh, yellow for Canaan and blue for Zion. And then you've got your notepad where you keep the points, scoring points. And then you have an instruction manual that also has the quiz questions and the answers, which is what you'll use during the game. So now we're ready to play. So everything's laid out, and we're now going to play the game Journey to Beulah. I'm going to demonstrate how you would play the game as if you were here with me. So with Journey to Beulah, you can play with a minimum of 2 people or 4 people, and more people can play if they are in team. There are 4 cities on the board game, and each person would have 2 cities, okay? So for me, for example, we'll say I'll take Canaan and I'll also take Bethel, okay? Now, you also have cards. You have one set of cards which is people, and then you have another set of cards which are animals, artefacts and objects. So what we're going to do is we will lay 2 cards out from each pile so that you have a total of 4 cards. And you turn them over so that you see what you have on the card. So for example, on the people card, we've got Samson here. We've got Abraham on the other person card. And with the animal, artifacts and objects, we have a donkey and we have a horn. Okay? These cards are going to be important later in the game, but for now, we'll just lay them out. Brilliant. Now what we do is we roll the dice, and the dice has come up with 2, which means that you would move 2 points along the board. So if we start with my city Canaan and I move 2 points, I'm on a stone, which is nothing. However, if I moved a 3rd point and landed on trial, because this is my city, yellow and yellow for trial, it doesn't mean anything. However, if somebody else landed on this trial stone that was in my city, what would have to happen is they would spin the spinner. Now, because it's landed on favour, the favour of God is upon their life, which means that they don't lose anything. However, if it landed on 2,500, for example, what would happen is that they would get minus 2,500 points and I would get an additional 2,500 points because they've landed on trial in my city. Okay? So, this is a points-based game. You get a better chance of winning the more points that you accumulate. So, you have a paper that will be the points card. So what I'm going to quickly do this at the beginning to make it faster, is write out. So we've got me, who is Leanne. Now say there was another person playing who is X. Because they would have landed on 2,500, for example, they will have minus 2,500 points and I would have plus 2,500 points. This is a points scoring system. Now they'd continue to roll the dice and we'd continue to play. If anybody lands on the PENIEL stones, which are the purple stones, faith, righteousness, power, praise, worship, prophecy, holiness and blessing, what happens is they have a look at their cards. Now if their cards have any of these on them, so for example, I've landed on faith, and I've got a card which says faith on it. So as a result of that, I get 500 points. If my card doesn't have any of the terms that the PENIEL stones have on it, then I don't get any points, but I don't lose any points, okay? The next thing that can be landed on is quiz. If anybody lands on quiz, what happens is that they get to go to the quiz booklet. Now within the quiz booklet, there's 3 different types of questions which are worth different points. You've got 1,000 point questions, you've got 1,500 points questions, and you've got 2,500 point questions. Now the difficulty of the question is linked to the points. The higher the points, the more difficult the question. Now a person can answer a question, and whether they get it wrong or right will determine the points that they get. For example, what river was Jesus baptized in? The River Jordan. So if the person got that question right, they'd get 1,500 points. Following answering a question from the quiz, what then happens is that they get the opportunity to tell a story with their cards. Now this is when the game gets quite exciting, and you get to test whether they really know their Bibles based on what kind of stories they come up with. So if we look at the set of cards I've got a horn, Samson, Abraham, and a donkey. So I'll try to, you can rearrange the cards, by the way, in order to make your story flow better. So if I try to rearrange these cards, the story I can come up with is that Samson was a mighty man of strength. He had great power, so much so that he was able to use the jaw of a donkey to defeat his enemies. Now, one thing that must be noticed is that with these set of cards, I can actually show you based on this diagram. You can tell a story by using all of the top row, or you can use a combination of the top row and the bottom row, but you cannot tell a story by only using the bottom row. So, to give you an example here, we've got, if I choose these 3 cards here, I'm going to choose 3 because the 4th card doesn't really match the story that I'm about to tell. I can't fit it in. The stories have to make sense, they have to be biblical. So if we use these 3 cards, you can say Samson was a man of power, and strength, so much so that he was able to use the jawbone of a donkey to defeat his enemies. And if you were to just use the top row, a story I could tell is that, so for the top row I can only really use 2 cards. Samson was so strong that he used the jawbone of a donkey to defeat his enemies. Okay? So, if you use 2 cards, so you have to use a minimum of 2 cards to tell a story. If you use 2 cards, then you will get 1,000 points. If you use 3 cards, you get 1,500 points. And if you manage to use all 4 cards, then you'll get 2,500 points. Okay? That is bonus points that you get. For each card you use, you also get points. So to just clarify that point, each of the cards have points on them, okay? So if you use 2 cards, you get the points for each of those cards, and then you get an additional 1,000 bonus points. And then if you use 3 cards, you get all of the points listed on that card, so 5,000, 1,000, another 5,000, so that'd be 11,000, and then you get an additional 1,500 bonus points. Now you continue rolling the dice and continue playing in that fashion till eventually a person reaches Beulah. The first person to get to Beulah, or if you're playing with 2 people, so me and somebody else, whichever one of us gets both of our tokens to Beulah first will then get a completion bonus point of 5,000, okay? And you have to make sure that you're recording that on the point sheet in order to make sure that the winner is chosen correctly. And if it was a game with 4 different teams, then it would just be the first team or the first person to get to Beulah would get the 5,000 bonus completion points.